What's up, everybody? My name is Daniel Unmanageable, and this is Hard Knocks Talks. Tonight's show is sponsored by Whitecap Dakota First Nation and Agency Chief Child and Family Services. Let's see. Tonight's guest, Colleen Dell, has worked in Indigenous health, criminalization, and addictions research for the past 25 years. Tonight she is going to share her experience with turning her research findings into action and how she is making a difference with canine therapy. We are honored to have Colleen with us tonight, and we are going to meet her right after this. I spent 23 years living in addiction. 16 of those years I worked as a Red Seal tradesperson in Saskatchewan and Northern Alberta. During that time, I made many mistakes and took more than a few hard knocks. I went from tradesman to business owner to hiding from gang members and dumpster diving. But with that lived experience, I've decided to try and make a change. I've dedicated my life to raising awareness and promoting change in the fields of substance use and psychological health and safety. So join me and my guests as we take off the blinders around mental health in our communities and at work and shine a light on what's working and what's not working in the fields of mental health and occupational health and safety. I'm Daniel Unmanageable, and I'll be your host, and this is Hard Knocks Talks. We got Barb Fornsler here. She can tell that we're testing things, and she's like, it works!
Okay, there it worked.
Awesome. Okay, so we are going to find Colleen. Colleen, here we come. What's up, my friend?
Hi.
How are you feeling tonight?
I'm good, thanks. I'm honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, we're super honored to have you. Is there anything you'd like to say before we get started?
I just want to acknowledge the land and everyone that's here, including Annabelle, who you'll see in a bit. We just popped her head up here.
There she is.
And yeah, there she is. And I'm in Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis tonight.
Awesome. Okay, so why don't you? So you started working out. You started working a long time ago at EFRI in Manitoba, correct?
Yes.
What got you started in addictions work with Indigenous people?
Yeah, well, I grew up in the north end of Winnipeg, so it was what I saw and what I knew every day. I didn't realize, I don't think, it's what I saw, right? It was what my life was. And then when I went and I started my undergraduate degree at the University of Winnipeg, and I started volunteering at the Elizabeth Fry Society, and then things started to come together and to recognize that addictions and criminalization were so closely tied, including the disproportionate representation of Indigenous peoples in our criminal justice system.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what kind of challenges were you facing when it came to dealing with government agencies?
Oh, the challenges. I would say the main thing was not being heard. And whether I worked at Correctional Services Canada, I worked at Elizabeth Fry Society, like I said, or Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction, it was about not being heard. And that has changed. I think, wow, thinking back 25 years now, that's definitely changed. For example, we have the new Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions, which is amazing, right? So we have that. We have the Mental Health Commission in Canada that started, I guess, around 10 years ago now. So things have changed, but there's still that need to be heard. And obviously why you have this show, so the voices can be shared. But I think still, though, even if there is, people do hear, I'm not sure they're hearing the right thing. And there's just so much misunderstanding because people have so many opinions and there's so much frustration that they have. And it's really difficult, I think, for us as researchers to have the evidence heard, right? People hear what they want to hear sometimes in this field and not listening to the evidence that'll push us forward in people's health.
Yeah. Well, and it's difficult to get the evidence out to the public in a way that is accessible to them.
Well, absolutely. And then I think about, this is like a decade ago or what have you now, but sometimes even what the evidence is saying, we're doing the opposite at the policy level. So I think about when the conservative government came in at the federal level, and I was working at CCSA, and, all of a sudden it was overnight and we weren't allowed to use the word harm reduction. So it was just done, right? And that's not what the evidence. And then even when I came here to Saskatchewan in 2007, I came as the provincial research chair on substance use, and we flipped from an NDP to a conservative government. So Project Hope was done, which I was hired under, right? And then all of a sudden there was this, the approach shifted and things got put on people's lives, and the impacts of addictions don't get on hold, but these policy decisions sure make an impact on our lives, and they do not always follow the evidence, and we see that in our province right now.
Oh, okay. So what were some of the accomplishments you were making when you were in the Indigenous health and addictions field?
I think, and I know we're going to talk about this, but I think for me, in addiction specifically, it draws upon my understanding of Indigenous health and ways of knowing, is this the attention to animal-assisted interventions. I'm incredibly proud of that because that's an area where people didn't want to go, and some still do not want to go. But we'll talk about that later. And then probably, I think through the research chair is being able to share in our province the research findings in accessible ways. And when I had my chair in an awesome team like Barb and Sharon, on that team with a lot of other people, being able to bring information here and share that with frontline workers through different types of knowledge dissemination and so forth. So we had yearly workshops. We had like the Thunderbird Partnership Foundation did training, Center for Addiction and Mental Health, the BC Centre of Excellence on Women's Health. Just being able to bring that into the province to our frontline workers who are so busy doing their daily jobs in the addictions and mental health fields that, and with an Indigenous lens on there as well, that they don't always have time to read an article or see what the latest research is. And some of that isn't even accessible, right? To use, to access an article, it could be like $30, $40. It's just kind of ridiculous. So it's really fulfilling to be able to share that in our province.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about elders before we get too far away from the Indigenous health.
Sure.
What are some of the importance that you found or that's lacking in our healthcare system when it comes to the presence of elders?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, they're fundamental, and that's where the knowledge is held. And there's been change over the years, again, slow for the recognition of that, and you have more and more awareness now, but it's surely not where it needs to be. Today at the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction, they had their Issues of Substance conference, and Eddie Robinson did the opening talk, and that was wonderful. And he talked about his journey and understanding his identity and the role of culture in his healing from addiction. So just starting to see that in different places by knowledge holders. But for us in a research realm, our elders have been absolutely critical to anything we've done. And as we've moved forward in any of our projects and tried to make community change, we're always guided by the elders and knowledge keepers. And one of our projects with Center for Addiction and Mental Health and Thunderbird Partnership Foundation, we looked at developing an Indigenous knowledge for a wellness assessment. It's an instrument, I guess you can call, just looking at the effectiveness. This is really research language, but of First Nations culture as an intervention. You never really say it's an intervention, but this is the language of the research. And Elder Jim Dumont is the one that led this entire project, and with elders across the country and people like Barb and myself and Sharon, and we facilitated that process, but really that was owned by the community and led by the elders, and there's no other way to do it, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. So, is there anything else you'd like to touch on from the Indigenous health and addictions topic before we move forward?
Yeah, I think to me, I mean, I've learned so much, and I'm really grateful to have learned so much working in the community and with different communities. And, you know, probably the most important lesson that I learned is to listen. And Elder Gladys, oh my gosh, I'm bad for names, so I'm not even going to take a minute here and try to remember. Maybe Barb will put it in the chat, or Sharon will. You know, she said we have 2 ears, you know, 2 eyes and 1 mouth. And so use that mouth sparingly and listen with your ears. And that is definitely something I've taken to heart. And I try to practice myself, and I encourage others as well.
Sharon definitely has an answer. She says, Elder Dumont. He's incredible.
He is.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. Why don't we ask Sharon? Sharon, you got any questions for Colleen before we move on?
No.
All right.
You know, one thing that Sharon and I have talked a lot about is, you know, is what does it mean to be an ally as a non-Indigenous individual myself, right? And one of our other elders, Elder Joanne, has shared, you know, when we talked about that, she's like, we don't need an ally, we need solidarity, right? And that is a really strong message as well. And allyship, you know, it's great, and it's just a word that we're using now, but we also need action and ready and standing together. So I try to think about that and what that means in my actions as well, as an individual, you know, as part of our society, and also as a researcher, and what I can do to move forward in solidarity. Yeah.
So are you, when you, during that time, did you see a disconnect between the Indigenous communities and the mainstream healthcare as a, like from the Indigenous side? Like, was there such emotions that they just didn't even want to try to communicate?
No, but what I would say is, I mean, our system, I mean, you can easily say it's discriminatory and it's racist, right? Yeah. It has a long colonial history of that. So, and I know we're going to talk about the dogs coming up, but, you know.
I want to talk about the dogs so bad.
But it's related, right? Because, you know, can I just share one dog story right now, because it fits really well?
Oh, go ahead. Share the dog story.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll even put Annabelle in the picture there.
Okay, because it is a story about Annabelle, and this is all related. And you know, this was at the methadone clinic, and an Indigenous client that was hard to engage, and so they said, you know, maybe can you bring in Annabelle as a therapy dog? And that then, you know, would that help there be a therapeutic alliance with the counselor or what have you, right? And so the client came in, wonderful woman. She came in the first day and she met Annabelle. And yeah, so they hit it off right away. And Annabelle was really super animated with her, and it was wonderful, right? And then the client came back the second day. And I'm calling her the client because I don't want to use her name, but she came back the second day, and she brought pictures of her babies who are in care. And who do you think she showed? Right? She showed Annabelle, right? Because, you know, anybody has part of that system, even though you're at a methadone clinic, they're still representing that system that is so harmful to her. So I could be the nicest, most non-discriminatory person and trying my best to be that, but her continual experiences for vast majority of her life have been the absolute opposite, right? Mm-hmm. So is she going to support the system and trust the system? No. Why should she, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's why we need to do things different, and that's one example. And I'm just gonna and with this, working with Elder Dumont and the Honoring Our Strengths, that project, and it went into this larger Honoring Our Strengths renewal framework. And we came up through his work, right, with the definition of wellness. And this was with other elders across Canada. And I just want to read this definition because I have this down here. And this is just going to make that sense. It's going to ground that story in a little bit more sense here. And it says, wellness from an Indigenous perspective is a whole and healthy person expressed through a sense of balance of spirit, emotion, mind, and body. Central to wellness and belief is belief in one's connection to language, land, beings of creation, and ancestry, supported by a caring family environment. So compared to a Western definition or even look at health, it's always looking at what could we fix? What's the deficit and what could we fix? Wherever do you hear a definition that talks about beings of creation, right? That very holistic understanding. So that's really informed where I'm at now and how I kind of started working with the dog.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can kind of see my dog beetling around behind me here. Every time you see it, you can sort of see a tail just wag its way past. We love dogs on Hard Knocks Talks.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, let's move forward. So, with your experience in the legal system, you decided to get into researching the criminalization of addiction. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you about a project with Sharon because she's here. And this one was called Stilettos to Moccasins. And this is one of our very first large projects together. This was another Canadian Institutes of Health funded research. And we worked with Elder Joyce Paul on this. The late Elder Joyce Paul was an amazing woman. Mm-hmm. And this looked at the role of stigma and addictions and criminalization on the self-identity of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis women. This, too, was a community-based project. The women involved, this is how I got to know Sharon, actually. The women involved all had lived experiences. At that time, Sharon had done a lot of interviews as well with other women with lived experience. And so what we did is we turned that research into a song and a music video. And I think that you have it, Daniel, if you could show it.
I do.
Yeah, I showed it to you earlier, so I think.
Hang on 1 minute here.
Yeah, and then, and this is we worked with Violet Nathow. She's a singer and songwriter, and she was absolutely amazing to work with. Our team, we had again, led by Elder Joyce Paul, and we had individuals with lived experience. We had policymakers, we had representatives from Health Canada, we had researchers, we had students. Yeah, there was a lot of people involved.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's see if we can play it here. I may have to do some tweaking, but let's see what we got.
Okay.
We don't have sound.
Aw.
I'm sorry, we don't have sound.
That's okay. People could watch it if you just Google.
Oh, there you go.
Can you hear it?
Yeah.
No.
You can't hear it?
I can hear it.
No, they can't hear it.
Oh.
Okay. Damn it. Okay, sorry. We are going to have to work on this while you continue your talk. So, anyways, please continue.
Yeah, so that was that was a long-term project, and I think, you know, as we talked about turning our research findings, it's into more than just an article. And in that one, we were able to do this song and music video. And I think I saw this morning when I pulled it up, it was around 32,000 views. And that's a way to share research findings, right? And hope and everything that goes with that. It's a message back to the women from the women who are participating in it. And I don't know if I'll ever have 32,000 people read an article that our team writes, but it's they sure did with the music video. So it's great to create other types of digestible information. You know, this is a really large project, and we were able to turn it into that. I don't know, Sharon, if you have anything to say about it.
Oh, that for me, that was really that was a great time. Like, I really enjoyed going to the treatment center and interviewing and laughing and crying and developing that song was great. There were so many great things we got out of that. I still actually have one kit, Colleen. I have one of the kits at my office. But I know people still talk about it and still ask me questions about it. So it was it's still out there, and that's important that it's still being looked at.
Yeah, it for sure is.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, there, Barb just posted it.
Oh, Barb posted it. Thanks, Barb. I don't know why there's no sound, but truthfully, I can't fix that right now. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. So, let's see. Did you have any other products from this research focusing on the criminalization of Indigenous women?
Yeah, you know, we did, and Sharon just said that. We had a workshop kit, and so we worked, we got additional funding, and we hired 12 knowledge brokers across the country. These are all Indigenous women with lived experience again, and they became like train the trainers. We created a half-day workshop, and they were all trained in it, and they went out into their communities and trained it. I know they did it at Calder here for many, many, many years. I think the last I heard was a year ago. Someone was looking for the DVD because they played it so many times, right? So yeah, that workshop was about raising awareness around identity and stigma in the healing journeys of criminalized Indigenous women, and the role of hope, right? The importance of hope to individuals on their healing journey. And I think that's what the song and video also provided to people, was a sense of hope. And I'll just put this in context that we started this in 2007. So this is a while ago now, right? So maybe, you know, talking about identity and the importance in addictions right now is a no-brainer. At that time, there wasn't a lot of people talking about that, or I should say they were talking about it, not being heard, right? And in particular in academic realms.
So, did you set any wheels in motion as a result of your findings?
You know, I think one thing that we're always at the table doing, because we had such a large team, there were 30 people, and I think it's hard to measure what those impacts are, but I like to think that our attention to lived experience, because you're so committed to that and remain now. But again, when you go back, what's that, 11 years ago now, or more than 11 years ago, talking about lived experience and having lived experience at the table was, you know, not that common as it is now. So I'd like to think that we contributed as a collective to some of that. I even remember, like, paying elders through our CHR grant was like, there was no category, right? These things they just weren't done at the time. So we helped make some categories because we were committed to this is how it has to happen. There's no other way of doing this. And they're going to be paid and however, whatever we're doing, lots of fights all the time. I shouldn't say fights, lots of struggles, right? Because we didn't fit it. But, you know, as a collective, I think we had a lot of power in being able to do that and moving some of that forward.
Okay, so then you got into canine therapy. How did you find that passion? How did you go from researching criminalization of addiction to canine therapy?
Right. So my whole background was on criminology and prisons. That was my original background and a lot of what I saw when I grew up. And so the linkage with addictions made a lot of sense. And then, as I said, that understanding, a much more holistic understanding of wellness from an Indigenous perspective that I was able to learn about through all of my involvement with the different projects that it all just kind of came together. And it was about 10 years ago now, and I was just like, I don't really know if I want to do this anymore. The addictions field is difficult, and when you have addictions in your own family, I mean, it's a lot to take in all the time, right? And so I was like, well, I think I want to do something different. And I had a sabbatical coming up. I tell this story all the time. And someone said, well, why don't you just choose a new topic and like what's something you love? And it just, and I don't even remember who this person, and I had said, I love my dogs. So I actually just went in dogs and addiction. And I found one study, someone did their PhD, and they brought dogs into addiction treatment center. And then everything just clicked really, really quickly in that it fits so well. You know, through our work with the Thunderbird Partnership Foundation, we talk about culture and the role of hope, belonging, meaning, and purpose. And when I think about those, you know, for Indigenous clients, then I think about those in a more holistic way and how, and just how the animal fits in there, right? Not just dogs, not just dogs. I actually started working with horses for a couple of years before I worked with dogs. Yeah, and so it was just, it all just kind of came together, and it just also allowed me to be strength-based instead of looking at the deficits of a system or people, which, you know, a lot of what we do is that way. And it was really great to focus on strength. So it was really shifting that understanding of wellness.
Awesome. So tell us about putting this into practice.
Putting it into practice. Well, Miss Annabelle here and I, because I'm a community-based researcher and I've always worked with the community, she and I traveled to Illinois, and I think we were there for 3 weeks, and I did a dog psychology class. Because I figured if I'm going to be working with the animals, I really have to have a better understanding. And that's the same. It's much easier working with community members with lived experience because they are very good in telling me what they think and they feel. So not as much with the dogs because I wasn't aware. I live with dogs, but I didn't realize, I didn't have that understanding, right? So I got that through going there, and then I worked with a number of dogs over time, and I worked with Subi, and he's passed now. Same for Kisby, she's just passed last week. I have Annabelle here, and I have a new guy, EJ. But it was Kisby actually. So once I did this training with the dogs and understood more about dog behavior and what have you, I did an online certificate in that just to get a basic understanding. And then I had them tested as therapy dogs. And at that time, Subi, Annabelle, and Kisby all passed as therapy dogs, which means they just really, really, really love people, which Annabelle does. She absolutely loves people. And they like to visit with people. So there was a student in our department in sociology at the U of S, and she was doing a placement at the Remand Center, and she said, hey, why don't you bring the dogs here? And so we're like, yeah, let's bring therapy dogs there. Why not? I'm new at this. This makes sense. And I know RPC, that's my whole background in looking at criminology and incarceration. That was actually my PhD. And so it took us about 6 months to get the dogs in. Wasn't quite as easy as I had thought in the beginning. Lots of pushback. But we did, and it was great. And I'll with you, because there were two people that we started visiting with, and I just want to share both of those and just an example from each, because it was that really got me hooked and saying, oh my gosh, there's something here, right? And I shared Georgette's story, right? earlier. But this was Terry's story, and this was the very first time, and it took a long time for us to actually get going. So we had about an hour of waiting because it was really confusing for everyone. But then they did bring Terry, and there's a very big clunky window in it into the visiting room, and she was on that one side of the window, and I'm on the other with Kisby, and Kisby sees her, and Kisby was a boxer. Oh my gosh, just full of energy boxer. And she saw Terry through that window, and her little tail was wagging and happy. And then Terry, they let her in, and Kisby did probably everything she wasn't supposed to. And me as a new therapy dog handler, I think she licked her a lot, not supposed to do that. But anyways, Terry had said, I haven't seen a dog. First, boxers are her favorite dog, which, lovely. She hadn't had a dog in at least 10 years because she had been in the system. She was about 30, and she had been in the system since she was 16. And she, I don't know, maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes went by. So happy. Everyone's happy. The dog's just as happy as Terry. And I was like, wow, this is a really great thing. And then Terry said, do you think she knows if I'm a good person? And then Kisby just flipped on her back and exposed her belly. So for me, I was able to say, oh my gosh, and it wasn't because she was being submissive. Kisby was not a submissive dog. Terry was not overpowering in any way. And I would say, you betcha she does. And this is what it means when she does that. So that to me was this incredible realization that there are these, I don't want to call them teachable moments either. There are these magical moments. I shouldn't use that word as a researcher maybe, but they are quite magical, right? So there's something happening there between the dog and Terry that is well beyond me and my understanding, but I'm also able to use that opportunity to say, yes, Terry, she knows you're a good person, right? So there was that, and I just want to share one other one because these were really foundational to everything I've done since. And this is with Kisby again, and this is with Tyler. And Tyler had been in the institution for a very long time, and he came into the room, and this time he probably knew her maybe 4 times we had met, if I'm remembering right. And this time that he came in, he shuffled. Like, he just shuffled these tiny little steps. And he just laid on the floor, on the concrete floor there in the visiting room. And Kisby, is a super bouncy boxer. But she went up to him, and she just laid beside him. And I was like, what? Wow, right? And so for 20 minutes, he laid there. She laid beside him, and he pet her once in a while. And that's what he needed. And she knew that, right? So again, it's that relationship and that interaction, maybe I should say, that's happening, that we're constantly trying to struggle to figure out what's happening. And maybe some of it isn't meant to be understood. I'm kind of going to that space sometimes. But it, again, also gave an opportunity. That relationship, she felt comfortable. The importance of physical touch, especially if you're in prison. So this is a healthy touch. We also knew that from working with youth and horses in the past. Yeah, so there's just so much going on. And I just wanted to share those two because it's pretty powerful, and I could share stories all night. But those two really kind of foundation for me, understanding there's a lot going on here. And so people who have pets, I know you know what I'm talking about, but I think what happens is we don't realize the animals who they are, and I don't think we realize how much they contribute to us in our families, and in particular within looking at recovery from addiction.
So what would you like to see with animal therapy and addiction in the future? Where are we going?
I'm just going to go, again, back at the CCSA conference today, they talked about, at the beginning, Minister Bennett from the new Mental Health and Addictions Agency or Ministry And then the CEO of CCSA, Rita, shared, we need to look at compassion and what have you. And I was just like, yes, I know this, right? This is what the dogs tell us all the time. Comfort, love, support. This is what individuals need. And this is what those animals provide. So I would like to see, number one, I'd like to see it as part of the conversation to look much broader than human to human. We want to look at the role of animals. We also want to look at the role of the environment and the land in our wellness and our well-being. And I think we're in a time now with COVID that people realize the importance of being outside in our connection to the land. And also a lot of people are starting to realize the importance, or have over the last year and a half, the importance of their own animals within their families. Maybe more so, and I'm going to say yes, definitely more so than we had in the past collectively. So I would like animals to be a part of that society, part of that conversation, and also just look at what can we learn from them, right? So it's not what they're giving us. It's not only about that. It's also about their welfare, but it's also about what can we learn from them. So the way I always say is there's, humans are at the top, so we think we're all this and more, and then there's animals and the environment. Well, we're not doing so good with either of those, right? So what if we kind of even the playing field again? And you can see how this goes back to Indigenous worldviews and ways of knowing, a much more holistic and integrated way, or even going back to Elder Dumont's definition of wellness, right? Of bringing that all together. That's what I'd like to see. And I am encouraged that these conversations are happening, or even for our team, getting published now is a little bit easier when we're talking about, whether we're working with service dogs and veterans with PTSD and opioid addiction, or prison programs we have with the dogs. Before 10 years ago, the journals sometimes won't even look at our work because they're like, it's a dog, or why would you bring a dog into the emergency room? I remember that being one of the reviewers' comments. But now I think people are a little bit more open, and we don't have a choice. I think we need to understand the integration and how important that is.
Okay, so I have good news, I think. I have the video. So we're going to watch the video.
Yay!
If it works, we're going to watch the video. Then we will go into the viewer's voice. So if anybody has any comments or questions for Colleen or for Sharon, Sharon's sitting here too. If you guys would like to say anything, put them in the chat now. We are going to watch this video. Cross your fingers. Can you hear it?
Yes.
Excellent.
I survived through the pain, many emotions like waves, laughing and crying again and again. Honesty, strength, friends, and devotion, showering gifts of hopes to reclaim. Walking the streets, dragging my heart, wandering with my head held down in shame. When and how did my family fall apart? Who am I? What is my name? Surviving the streets, lost and alone. I started a journey to find my way home. From stilettos to moccasins, our spirit dances within. On our way find our peace, and this is who I am. And broken barriers and new discoveries, my spirit I now reclaim. And coming home to who I am, and taking honor in my name. No longer a prisoner lost in this world. Look within my shell to find that pearl. From stilettos to moccasins, our spirit dances within. On our way to resolution, we find our peace. And this is who I am. And this is who I am.
All right. Okay, that was amazing. Colleen sent me that at about 4:30 this morning. Her and I are both very early risers, and she said, "I'm like, I didn't need to cry at 4:30 in the morning, Colleen, but thank you."
You're welcome.
So we don't really have many questions, to be quite honest. We've got a few comments. Let's have a look. So, and Wilmina, I'm sorry, oh, wait a minute. Yes, there is a question. So this isn't going to all display, but I'll read it out. Wilmina, thanks for the comment. Firstly, so amazing that you have brought the dogs into the healing circle. It is so, so, so true that dogs have so much ability to help us heal through the non-judgmental love they radiate. I do believe my daughter may not have survived the worst days of her addiction without her dog by her side. The programs that used to bring dogs into prisons in Saskatchewan have not been allowed to do so since COVID. Is that correct?
Right, yeah. So, yes. The only dogs that we have in Saskatchewan are St. John's Ambulance therapy dogs that visit the jail. I do that as well as the Regional Psychiatric Center. However, I do run a program with Dr. Darlene Chalmers called Positive Support at a Drumheller prison, and we haven't been able to go there, but we have started at RPC with only 2 patients there. Dogs for St. John's Ambulance are not visiting anywhere in the province right now. We're putting all our efforts into the vaccination clinics. So we've been there for the last 3 months, and we're starting right now quite heavily to get the kids vaccinated, the 5 to 11-year-olds. So.
There's another question from Janice Butcher.
Yeah.
Can you repeat Dumont's definition of wellness?
Yeah, we got another question coming in here from Janice. Janice, thank you so much for the question. Janice asks, can you repeat Dumont's definition of wellness?
Absolutely, and maybe Barb, if you put the link in the chat there or on Facebook. Yeah, so the definition is wellness from an Indigenous perspective is a whole and healthy person expressed through a sense of balance of spirit, emotion, mind, and body. Central to wellness is belief in one's connection to language, land, beings of creation, and ancestry, supported by a caring family and environment. And you know, if I thought about one word that kind of captures, I think, no matter what I'm looking at within the addictions field, and it is, and the dogs and working with the horses as well have just, have really, I've just brought home, I can't think of the way to say it, right, have really solidified of whatever, that the importance of connection, and our connection to each other, again, our connection to animals and the land. And Johan Hari does a wonderful TED Talk, and he says the opposite of addiction is connection. And I love that. I absolutely love that, because I think that's just supported every time I'm out in the field. And even at a vaccination clinic, you know, wherever I am, these animals bring that connection. And through them, brings connections between people as well.
Barb, too.
Okay, hang on a sec. What's that?
Barb has a question, too.
There's another question?
More from Barb.
From Barb?
Yeah.
I'm not seeing a question from Barb. Turn your mic on.
It is on.
Is it? There you go. Okay. I'm not seeing the question from Barb here, but Sharon is. So Sharon, go ahead and read that question out for Colleen.
Okay, it says, where can we learn more about where they can visit dogs or access visiting for their programs?
Yeah, that's a good question, Barb. I would look, if you're in Saskatchewan, just definitely through St. John's Ambulance, because yeah, that is our only kind of organization in the province, and you can get put on a waiting list. So myself and one of the dogs who have passed had visited at Prairie Harm Reduction, right? So once we get back and we're allowed to visit, if it's not myself visiting there, I don't know who's going to be, but they're all, and we'll make sure that some dogs are there. And I know Bruno visited there for a very long time. I was only there for the past, I think, 6 months or so before COVID. So yeah, you can contact St. John's, and I'm gonna think that we're probably gonna be back in the community, maybe, you know, within the first couple of months of the new year. I'm hoping March or something. We'll see how everything goes with COVID, but yeah. And then I'll just add to that, just, you know, for people who are in residential treatment or inpatient programs or whatever, there are other ways of connecting with animals, and that is just with people's own animals. There's opportunities to have them if they're well behaved and things like that, right? And then people who are on their own that are at home, just looking at your animal as that support and recognizing them and thanking them for what they do. It's kind of like grief with a pet. If you even went 10 years ago, we'd be like, oh my gosh, your dog died, get over it, right? I think we're in a really different place socially now. And I'm even okay with saying, yeah, I'm grieving my dog. I mean, she was a colleague. I worked with her for 14 years, and I'm okay with saying that. I don't think I would have been okay with saying that 10 years ago, just again, because society is in a different place. It's the same thing with looking at animals as support. So there was a survey by Canadian Center on Substance Use and Addiction, and we put a question on this recovery survey, and 88% of Canadians said that animals were an important part of their recovery process. Lots of other things were as well, but animals were 88%. The number was lower in Saskatchewan. I don't remember what it is right now, but it was lower, but still.
Got another comment coming in here. Actually, it's got a question coming in from Thomas. Thank you for the question, Thomas. Thomas asks, how old does a dog have to be a therapy dog, or are they trained when they are pups?
Right, so most places are a year and up. I would say wait until 2. Annabelle started at 1, but they're still pretty young at 1. I would wait until 2, and I am with my other one. And typically the training itself, the dogs are, they're just really friendly dogs, and you can't train that part, right? But they do have basics. But really these, Annabelle's turned around, she's had enough of me, blah, blah, blah. She's like, you're done, woman. I'm going to bed now. Yeah. So it's just really, if your dog really likes people, that is a potential therapy dog. And then it just has good skills, right? It just like, it's a good, you know, it's not jumping all over people and things like that. It's not licking people uncontrollably or whatever, right? But yeah, you can't really train a dog to be a therapy dog. It's like people, either you're an extrovert or you're an introvert kind of thing, right?
There's another question there.
Another question coming from our dear friend Holly. Thanks for the question, Holly. It doesn't all pop up. Okay. Holly asks, do you have any advice for service providers who want to integrate this understanding that animals can be a support for people dealing with problematic substance use?
Yeah, any type of, you know, my number one thing is to ask the question. And when the methadone clinic was the methadone clinic at that point, and we had so many discussions and brought the dogs to the waiting room and everything. And one thing that changed was when people would call in just to get information in the beginning, they had a question about what are the supports that you have. They've added the animal onto that. Is there a pet that's a support? Because it was such an important support to people, and also opened up discussions when people asked about the dog. I know we have these little stuffies or these little like bulldogs that we give away. If you're a service provider having even just a little plush dog or a dog on your desk, that can be an opening conversation, right? I remember being in one situation where the client came in, wasn't all that friendly with the workers at this place, and he wanted to see the dog. And then, a half hour later, after he left, the nurse was like, I had no idea all this stuff was going on in his life. He barely tells us like anything ever. But he was talking to me and telling me all these things about his animals in his past, and all this information came up about him. I didn't know. I'm just there to listen. I'm just really the taxi cab driver for Annabelle, right? So I would say, Holly, anywhere where service providers can just initiate that discussion around animals, and even asking someone if they have a pet. It's like asking people if they have a child. And if they have a child that's in their life, that could be a really great discussion in an opening situation, right? Mm-hmm. And so I know when I visit with the dog, one question I ask, I say, do you have a pet, or have you had a pet in the past? Right? Because even though the pet may have passed itself, it's still very much a part of who we are. And we've seen that in studies with veterans, much older veterans, and reminiscence and memories, and how important that is, and how much those are a fabric of who we are today. So it's a great question, too, to talk about animals from the past, not just from the present.
Mm-hmm. Barb's got a question here. I'm not sure if there's a sarcastic inflection on this or not, but we're going to ask it anyways. Barb asks, are you an academic?
Who, me?
Yeah, who do you think you are?
I think she was referring to Holly.
Oh, was she talking to Holly maybe?
She was talking to Holly.
I don't know. I can't tell if you're responding to questions. I don't know.
She was talking to Holly.
I can say Annabelle's an academic. It's a good question, Barb. Who am I? I don't know.
Who are you?
Yeah. Oh, we've got Earl. Earl from Oxford House, Canada, just chiming in with a big old fist. Right on, Earl. Good to see you tonight. I like that picture, by the way. Where'd you get that? So let's see. I think that's about it. The questions have died down. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with tonight?
Oh, isn't that a good question? I should have thought about this. No, thank you for the people who are here. Thanks for listening. And just think about animals in your own lives, in the lives of your clients. And they're really easy to integrate in having conversations. So I would encourage to make sure that they're kind of like on the purview of how you think about recovery or healing or wellness and addictions, and not to leave them on the side.
Cool.
Janice had a question too about, can you post this link to TED Talk?
I
think that's what she was saying.
Did you hear that?
Can you post the link to TED Talk?
Post the link to TED Talks. I'm not seeing that one.
Oh, because I did a TED Talk.
Oh!
If you go to my website, colleendell.ca, if you go to colleendell.ca, the TED Talk's on the front page somewhere.
Colleen what?
Yeah. Dell.
ColleenDell.ca.
Colleen Dell or Colleen Dell?
I got to turn her microphone off.
Okay, I'm not going to put that because my mic's good.
We'll get it in there. We'll get it in there. Okay, I think that's it. So,
Great.
Colleen, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And take care, my friend.
Yes, thank you.
Barb, quit trolling the chat. Yeah.
Back off,
So
Barb.
before I go to the call to action, I want to say stick around after the closing. We're going to spin the wheel and give those gift cards away. We have not forgotten. So there's power in numbers. If you would like to contribute to ending the stigma around emotional pain, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Like and comment your thoughts on our posts. Let us come together with our lived and living experience as a resource that has the power to engage new thought processes, to promote new ideas, to broaden the spectrum of care, and to show the world that the lie is dead. We do recover, and we're here to show you how. Good night. Okay, here we go. I love the music. Okay, I am going to give a shout out before we do this. These gift cards come from the P5 Project YXE, and it is a research project geared to finding solutions to people who struggle with problematic substance use. They just finished their data collection, and program manager Dr. Barbara Fornsler wants to say thank you to the community in a good way. So she gave us some gift cards for groceries, and we are going to give them away. We are going to spin this wheel right now. We've got a gift card coming to Simric. Oh, we've got our resident wheel spinner. Let's see. Okay, Grady, spin that wheel. And we've got Roseanne Morphy. All right, we have given away 2 gift cards. We will be in contact with both of you over Facebook Messenger. Feel free to reach out to us if you want. And that's it. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and join us every Sunday night.